The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, my name is Libby Ellis and I'm the founder of InCharge. A warm welcome to you in joining us today for our webinar called Direct Your Support and Live Your Life. You'll notice a few people on our panel today, so I also want to extend a warm welcome to our guest speakers, Linda Hughes, Catherine Marnie and Carolyn Campbell-McLean, as well as our Auslan interpreter, Hilary McPherson, and our live captioner, who I think is just trying to get on at the moment. Thanks so much from Bradley Reporting for being able to do our live captioning today. I want to make an apology before we start. Lindsay Cotty, a man from Bathurst, New South Wales, was scheduled to speak today. Unfortunately, Lindsay couldn't make it at the last moment, but we're very pleased to have Carolyn be able to share her experience of creating a partnership with a service provider today. So I'm just going to turn my webcam off now and start to share some slides to give you a bit more of an introduction today. So InCharge has been created with a strong mission. We're here to provide assistance to people with disabilities and families to take charge of their lives and their supports. We also work with services who are interested in these kinds of transformative opportunities for people. I'm a family member myself, and my brother has lived in his own home, and we've helped him to direct his supports for the last 16 years. We've found that many people are inspired and motivated to want to make a change and to exercise more choice and control in their lives. But it's really quite tricky to know exactly how to do that. So that's what we aim to do through our learning opportunities like today and through our programs. You can find out a bit more about us on our website, incharge.net.au. One very powerful way that people are finding of gaining more control in their lives is to self-direct their supports and their funding. For a great many years, people receiving services have by and large been offered fixed models of care and support. This means really that services are kind of created before people arrive on the scene. When people self-direct their supports, they're actually finding new roles for themselves as the partners, the creators, and the drivers of their own solutions. So self-direction is when a person with disability, and maybe with the assistance of their family or support network, has choice and control over their support. Self-direction means that a person with disability and their family can choose who supports them, when they are supported, how and what they do in their life. To be in control or to direct your own support doesn't mean that you have to manage and be responsible for all of the tasks and the funding, but you can do this if you want, and we're going to hear from one person today, Linda Hughes, who will talk more about her experience with this. So there are different ways that people are finding they can self-direct their supports. This webinar today showcases 3 different ways people are achieving self-directed support. The first is by receiving a direct payment via the National Disability Insurance Scheme. The second way is by working with a service provider to share roles and responsibilities. And the third way is by receiving a direct payment from a funder who is not the National Disability Insurance Scheme. So before we hear from our guest speakers, I just want to give you a little bit more information for today. So we're going to hear from each of the guest speakers. We're going to hear from Kath first, Carolyn, and then Linda. And then we're going to take questions. So that will be an opportunity for you to use the question panel in your control panel to ask questions. You might feel like writing questions out as you hear the speakers. You're welcome to do that, but we won't be looking at the questions and kind of sorting through them until all of the speakers have spoken. So, firstly, I'd like to introduce Catherine Marnie, who's going to speak about her experience with the National Disability Insurance Scheme. And I'm going to show some slides as Catherine is talking.
Thanks, Libby, and great to be part of In Charge's very first webinar too. May there be many more of them. I am a person who's blind, so most involves, I guess, access to visual information in one form or another, so a support with receiving, being able to access those materials. Just to give you a bit of a sense of some of what I do, it's things around grocery shopping, the things that you need a bit of help with, like buying gifts for people, doing the mail, filing it, you know, the paperwork still only comes in hard copy print, some banking, a bit of a hand with clothing sometimes and colours and what does and doesn't work together. So that's a little bit of a nutshell of what I do with my support people, who I actually tend to refer to as assistants, but I'll call them support workers for today just because that's the language that we're all more used to. And I direct my support using a shared management model, which is, I think of as a partnership, a disability service provider. Fortunately, it's a new service in the area, and so they're quite free and able to begin their life here, people who are part of the NDIS trial site. So they don't have some of the constraints of your larger service providers. I control the who, the when, and the what of my support. That's my responsibilities. The service provider assists recruitment and selection of staff, although we very much do that together. So they do it sort of when required. They pay the workers, and they manage the other legalities around employment, such as wages and conditions and insurances. I guess I like to think of myself as, or the team leader maybe, and the service provider is like the employer or the HR department. Shared management gives me the flexibility and control without the additional responsibilities of employer. I am able to do this through being funded by the National Disability Insurance Scheme. I've taken the option of a direct payment, what's known as a direct payment, and I'm just going to try and run through this process in a few little steps. So step one is that after I saw my planner initially, about a month's worth of funding is paid into my designated bank account, which I have to set up specifically for the NDIS payments. Step number two is I find and organise and change, and then I have the support that I need through service providers. Step number three is that the service provider then invoices me. Step four is that I pay the invoice. And step five is then that I claim back the money that I have paid from the agency. And then step six is that they put that money back into my account. And you can get more info about all of that on number of places, but the National Disability Insurance Scheme website gives you some fact sheets you might find helpful if this is new to you. And I just wanted to run through some of the tips or the learnings, I guess, that I found. I'm quite new to directing my own support. I'm one of those people that Libby referred to in the introduction that came from service-driven support experience. So I feel like I've still got my learning, my training wheels on. It's still a work in progress for me, but I'm already loving the benefits. So we talk a lot about needing to plan our lives and have a vision for our lives, and that's really, really important. And what I found was actually my missing ingredient that I needed to spend more time on is that I needed to think more about how support would be in my ideal life. How would it look? How would I design it? And some of the questions that I actually got from some other people who were more further down the track of directing their own support, which I found useful, were questions that I asked myself, like, what blocks or gaps do you have in your life that you access support for? What were the things that would work really well to have some support around in life that you are living? For me, I've found it helpful to think about it in the various roles that I have. So in what roles could support make a difference to me in? They're quite obvious things like being a tenant, being a business person, being a family member. It doesn't have to be anything too, out of the box, but just those roles that we all have in our everyday life. For me, it was also really important, and I know that the others will speak about this as well, was really important that I had control over the attributes and the qualities of the workers. I'd had some experience when the person giving me my support, hadn't been a good fit. So for me, it's really important to ask questions like, what are that person's values around me as a person? Do they see themselves in a mutual relationship with me, or is it a do-gooder making them feel good because they're giving someone some help kind of relationship? So for me, I need it to be mutual and equal, if you like. I guess how you manage the money and the other practicalities in the way that best works for you was something that maybe you need to have some of those other questions in your mind before you get to. In some ways, I think I jumped straight to that step. And so in retrospect, I think it's really important that you have those fundamental questions around your vision for your support, and then hopefully the mechanism that you'll use to fund it and it will become clear as part of that vision. If you are going to use a service provider or you're thinking about that, I guess it's just important to ask lots of questions. Keep asking them until you find what you're looking for. So eventually I found a service which knows me, knows the way I want to live my life, knows I'm a bit busy and chaotic sometimes, and will give me the flexibility and control that I, as much as I can possibly have with working with them, because they believe in my right to have it. So for me, that was critical, that they actually genuinely believe that people with disability have the right, if they choose, to direct their own support. When you do find the service provider that you think you'd like to share with, it's really important that you have an agreement with them. Make sure it's an individual agreement between you and the service provider, not just a generic one. There are some samples around, but it's really important that what you sign off on is one that's just between you and the provider and isn't anybody else's. Get really clear about what your non-negotiables are in your agreement. So mine were things around choosing the support workers. I won't have it. I insist upon that choice now. Directly relating to the support person to arrange your support rather than having to go through the service, that's a non-negotiable for me. Not being restricted by the service and its policies around things like work health and safety, and boundaries around relating to each other. I want the opportunity to work those out one-to-one with my support workers. ensuring that we're both safe and comfortable with you know, anything that we might be doing, like climbing a ladder or cleaning a window, of course. Another of my non-negotiables was not wanting them to have disability qualifications. I have a lot of people in my network that don't have disability qualifications, but really get me. I want to live my life and be in the community, so I want the option to work with people that don't necessarily have a background in disability. And I guess if you're not sure what your non-negotiables are, maybe think of the really good support experiences that you've had and put as much of, work out what it was that made them good and put as much of that in as you can. And then the ones that were horrible and eliminate them. So that's basically it. What's good, what's not good. I guess don't wait for the funding to come. We hear that a lot in lots of different areas of life as people with disability. Start as soon as you can. Start as soon as you think that you might want to make some changes, and see what changes you can make before the funding comes. I guess the other thing that I am realising more and more is that the NDIS is, you know, the funding that we receive in however it comes is important, but it's not the only answer. That never replaces, for me, community connection and the natural assistance of family and friends. It's part of the equation. I suppose for me, and perhaps for all of us, it is a matter of keeping reviewing and looking for ways to keep improving. I've got some ways to go. Sometimes I do leave it a little bit long and the cupboard gets a little bit empty of food because I haven't quite fitted support in. So that's a learning journey, but you're not going to have no food very often before you realise that you need to put your support in. And I guess expect some bumps along the way. And finally, for me, what's been critical are finding some others who are where you want to be in terms of directing their own support or close to it, and ask lots of questions. So we're going to hear from Linda a little bit. Linda and her son Jacob have taught me lots about getting the support that you want in the way that you want it, and so have many others. So I hope that's just a few key learnings that I've had on my journey so far. I guess the question is, who do you want to direct your support, you or somebody else?
Thanks very much, Kath. As I said, you can ask Kath questions at the end, towards the end, but we're going to hear next from Carolyn Campbell-McLean and her relationship, her shared management relationship.
Hi everybody, it's Carolyn here. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you all today, Libby. It's lovely that you've, been able to ask me to step in at the last minute, and I was quite happy to do that because I am passionate about this topic and would like to share my experience with those of you out there in the webinar land. So I'll just briefly tell you a little bit about myself before I go on to telling you about my experience with self-directing life services. I'm a I would like to say young woman with a physical disability, although I have been living independently in my own home for almost 20 years now. So I've got about 20 years of experience of organising my own care support at home. So I have carers at least 3 times a day coming to my home and assisting me with a range of tasks, including full personal care, full domestic assistance, as well as cooking and administration, and various other tasks that I need assistance with. So that's the reason I guess I am here today to tell you about my experience. So I know that a few years ago, over that time, I've been using a range of different types of models of services or different arrangements, if you like, for care and supporting me to live independently. ranging from the really, really, really terrible, what I like to say, the bad old days where, you know, a service like home care would be knocking on my door at 7 p.m. at night and saying, off to bed you go. And I was, you know, 19 or 20 years old thinking, isn't having freedom, living in my own home and, you know, being a university student and having a life and partying and studying and all those things that you do when you're that age. So, you know, that ranged right through from then being able to apply and be accepted on to get my own funding and then choosing a service provider that I felt more comfortable with. So I chose a traditional service provider and I had a range of positive and negative experiences there. About 6 years ago, I actually found out through accident really, doing some research on the new form of funding, which was individualised funding and direct funding payments, that there was another, besides having a traditional provider or having a direct payment to yourself where you all do everything involved, there was a third option, and that was kind of a shared arrangement. And I sometimes call it a brokerage model. An intermediary is my provider, so we're taking a shared in delivering the service and organising things. So it wasn't long until I switched over to this arrangement after I'd spoken to many other people who were having fantastic experiences, freedom in their life, much more than I was having in a traditional arrangement that I had. So I was ability to run my life in the way that, you know, everyone financial things, they kind of scare me off. So I thought, well, wow, this is the best of both models. So in 5 years of using community services, they have been the best option for me ever. I've been taken actively role in my service and making that service exactly what I need and want it to be in my life. It's enabled me to have better opportunities work-wise, personally, holiday-wise, just everyday life, stress-free, and being able to have that control and making decisions that directly affect me, being able to take that control back has been an empowering experience. So I honestly haven't looked back over the last 6 years. So I wanted to tell you a little bit quickly about my how-to, what do I actually do to make this happen. Well, I do the day-to-day management of a team of 7 carers, and that involves me being organised and planning ahead, doing a roster, and developing my team of staff that support me. So, for example, I do a roster in a Word document. It's not very fancy. I don't use any kind of particular technological program. I just use a Word. I'm sure there's a better way or a more fancy way of doing it, but I feel it works for me, so I use that. And I do a 6-weekly roster. So I work out when people's availability is and make sure that I put people on when they're available to work. And that makes me have more peace of mind, and it makes them more happy to come to work because they're not doing shifts where they're having to have their children, you know, farmed out or anything like that. So yeah, and on the day that the person's here, they fill in their hours on the book, and they, you know, each fortnight we do a timesheet, and you know that goes into the office, and the payroll is done by my provider. So basically, I have a lead role in recruitment, and in managing the carers in terms of the roster, filling in and managing behaviour and I guess developing team culture and doing so. It does take some of my time and energy. It takes me about an hour a fortnight to do the timesheets. It takes me about an hour a fortnight to any kind of sick carers or, fill in staff or swap things around. So I would say that 1 hour a week is all of the time I put into that, and for the outcome I get is, it's an absolutely great arrangement for me. It allows me to have peace of mind, choice, control, and life. So those are the things that I want to tell people about. I've done some slides that Libby might be able to show everybody that shows the role that I do in the program and the role that the provider does. So we do the shared arrangement. Lydia, you've got some of those roles up there. So the service support me in my role as the employer. So I am actually required to have an ABN number. So and that was not a problem. You just can get one from the ATO very easily, really. And it means that I'm actually the employer. And for me, that's really important because it means that these are reporting to me. It means that, they are much more attentive and much more reliable because they know that I'm the one who is giving them work and who is doing the roster, who is allowing them to take time off, and who is at the end of the day paying their wages. So for me, it gives me that power differential shift. I was working, or when I was using a traditional service provider, I was seen as the client, and you were made to feel that sometimes you were a burden, or that you were too hard, or that you were just the client really, and you were kind of at the bottom of the food chain. Whereas now I feel like I'm actually running the show, and I do my very darndest to make sure that the show runs really well. So, yeah, look, there are a range of roles that I take. And things like I do need to make sure that I get good staff, and it's really about being a smart recruiter. Like Catherine said, you need to think outside the box of recruiting and why are they wanting to work for you. I haven't employed someone with a nursing background for many years because I don't feel that I need a nurse. It's not a medical job. I've got a hairdresser on the books. She comes as one of my, and she happens to go to do my hair in the morning. So, there's lots and lots of benefits to creating your own thinking creatively about who is it that would fit in. People who traditionally might be carers, or disability staff, might not be the people that you actually want to employ. I like employing a range of people, and I actually find that mothers in the general local community are great because they want part-time work, and they've got those kind of nurturing and domestic skills that you're after. So, it's looking outside the box, and sometimes when covering the shifts, I am responsible if someone gets ill and they text me or call me, and I am the one who needs to fill that shift, and I do need to use my skills in negotiating and, thinking creatively about problem solving. So, for me it's been great because it's been a tool to use to practice those skills, and I think that those have improved for me over the 6 years of doing it. Another tip I guess I've got for people is the more effort that you put into creating your team, or making a really nice culture in the team, is you get the rewards back. So if you communicate well and you acknowledge good work, train people well, and you reward them and celebrate with them, then they're more likely to stay around. And so that most people would want consistent staff that will stay the distance, and rather than having lots of changeover of staff. So obviously, the more you put into building a team, the more you'll get a reliable and trained team. So the other tip I can leave people with, I guess, is I was really scared when I changed over. I decided or thought about changing to this new model. I thought, oh, what if it's more hard? What if it's too much work? What if I can't do it myself? You know, and I guess at the end of the day, I chose this model because I wanted the support of the agency, the provider, to help me with things that I wasn't so confident in. But at the end of the day, I felt the fear and I did it anyway. And it's honestly been the sliced bread for me. You know, it's really important to learn the lessons of others and to have these kinds of forums where we can share experiences and tips and you know, what works and what doesn't work. You never know, you know, changing to a different form of self-direction or a different way of doing things might actually be the best thing that you did. It might be better than okay, it might be really, really fabulous like it has for me. So for me, it's been the best thing ever, and I would encourage everyone to have a go to plan how they can be more involved in their services.
So thanks so much, Carolyn. And just in our last 10 minutes before questions, I'd now invite Linda Hughes to talk about her method of self-directing, which is receiving a direct payment.
Okay, thanks, Vicky. I'm going to start off with talking a little bit about my son, Jacob. For a long time, we've had this idea that Jacob should be included in the community as an active and valued citizen. You might call it a vision or an aspiration, that Jacob has a typical and good life, and that you know, Jacob needs support to be included and to contribute to the community, but that support should support our vision, that, you know, that Jacob is included and a valued participant in the community. We have done shared management, and really, by and large, this worked actually quite well. Occasionally, we would feel butting up against the limitations of what it could offer or the boundaries. But by and large, it actually worked okay. But really, when the opportunity arose for us to take on a direct payment and to directly employ support workers, we decided that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to have more control. So I suppose the reasons why we decided to do it, I don't know, Olivia, have you got the slides up there?
I'll just do it now, Linda.
So the reason we directly employ support workers are that there's more flexibility and tailored support. In our previous arrangement, we did have, as I said, flexibility, but now we just have more. We're able to find creative solutions to Jacob's support needs as well. Be much, much more flexible and thinking outside the box in how Jacob is supported. It's very cost effective to directly employ your support workers. You really do get more bang for your buck. And I think the fourth reason is really, really interesting, but you don't need to do it all yourself. And as ironic as it sounds, by taking on the additional responsibility of being the employer, I'm actually able to do less, more and do less myself. In effect, I do less management of Jacob's support, and I really just get on with being Jacob's mother. So this is how we do it. A bit of a mind map of how of our arrangement, and it starts in the centre with the big yellow face, which is Jacob, and it's Jacob's vision that he is included in the community as an active and valued citizen. Currently, Jacob has 2 volunteer jobs. He's enjoying swimming, and he's just started going to the beach and just met the people at the local surf club. He's an active member of the University Toastmasters and has the occasional public speaking. And like most 22-year-olds, he's interested in hanging out with family and friends, going to the pub, and occasionally seeing a band. And all for those things to happen, Jacob requires a high level of support. Some of this support is informal from family and friends, and some of the support is paid. So if you look up the top, the bundle of money, this is Jacob's individualised funding. We receive a direct payment of the funding, and in the language of the NDIS, which we're moving to, this is called self-management. We directly employ Jacob's paid support workers, which means that I become the employer of Jacob's workers. And because I'm an employer, I actually have additional responsibilities. These are the legal and financial responsibilities that all employers have. And we have to comply with the award and pay people appropriately. We have to withhold tax and pay super for the support workers and take out workers' compensation. But it doesn't have to be. In fact, because I've taken on these additional responsibilities, I'm able to delegate these responsibilities as well. So you can see from the funding, we pay a bookkeeper to handle most of the administrative responsibilities. Our bookkeeper handles the payroll, the tax, the workers' comp, the superannuation, insurances, and the budgeting. And even though we pay a bookkeeper, we still make really substantial savings, simply because we don't have the overheads that service providers have. So from the money we save, we employ a support coordinator who manages the team of support workers. The support coordinator and I diary of Jacob's appointments and appointments. She works out the rosters, she verifies the timesheets. If someone's sick, they call her and she sorts out a replacement. We work together recruiting support workers, and she does most of the training and induction. And importantly, she assists the team of support workers develop the know-how and the skills to connect Jacob to the community. And so the support team do the job of connecting and supporting Jacob in the community. Jacob's support team is incredibly flexible. So if something comes up, if there's a band playing down the street or at a local pub, we quickly make a change and Jacob can have support to go. So we can really respond to opportunities for Jacob as they arrive. And the structure of how we organise Jacob's support sustains our vision for Jacob to be included in the community. So there's a whole lot of ways you can get started doing this if this is something that really interests you. I'm really there to talk to people who are getting started in directing your own support and employing your own support workers. Up until recently, there's not a great deal of information out there. I've just recently pulled together a lot of information from different sources into one document that can help people just get their head around what they need to do and what they would like to take on themselves and what they'd like to delegate to others. Just remember, you don't have to do it yourself. It really, actually, as strange as it sounds, by being the employer, I get to do less. So it really works for us. So yeah, if you're interested in the workbook, there's a list of contacts and places you can go for information, or please feel free to contact me if you'd like more information about directing your support.
Thanks, Linda. I'm going to turn off the PowerPoints now.
Okay.
And share my webcam. So just to let everybody know that once the webinar finishes, we will be sending you out a notebook from today, which is jam-packed full of the information that you've seen on the PowerPoints today, plus a few added extras. So now we have quite a bit of time, about 15 minutes, to ask some questions. I've got somebody helping me with the questions, just in case you guys kind of send a lot of questions, just to try and click through and see if there are any themes. So there might be a little bit of a delay just as we're trying to sort through that. I noticed that somebody's put their hand up. You'll hear me describing what I'm seeing, as I'm a bit new to this as well. So I can't, I'm sorry, I can't find the hand function. I see that two people are putting their hands up. I'm wondering if you could just type your question into the question box. So, Carolyn, while we're waiting for people, maybe I could ask you whether you've ever considered, like Linda, taking on all of the employment functions.
I have considered it, but because this arrangement that I have right now is working really, really well, I have put that off probably till a few more people try it and I can get more tips from them. So Linda's already given me some good tips today, so I'll be thinking about it, particularly this idea that you can delegate a lot of the roles to other people. That would be good. And also the other idea is that you get bigger bang for your buck. So I like the idea of being able to save more money and use it for other things, or more support.
So, Carolyn, I'm interested to hear that you, so you use a service provider, but you are also the employer and you have an ABN number. So can you tell us a little bit then about, because I guess many people might have heard of like a traditional disability service provider being the employer of support staff. So support staff are actually on their books. But you're using what you call a broker agency as well as being the employer. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so basically my brokerage agency, they hold my funding, my funder, and they have a range of responsibilities in terms of they do, you know, a range of things like the payroll, and they, you know, organise the tax and the super, the insurance, all those kinds of legal and financial things. But they do charge a 5% administration fee out of my package. So the other things that they do are provide information, advice and assistance to me on relations, or if there's any issues that need to go to them in terms of problems, which often isn't any. They provide templates for care plans and individual plans and support to make those, although it is still my preferred, my responsibility to create those plans, obviously having an active role in my service. But they also do things like police checks, you know, the criminal record checks, and they do all of the back-end administration. That frees me up to really just focus on the direct relationships with the staff, like the team building and the, you know, the rostering and making sure that the relationships with the staff. So I really like that because it means I'm doing the things I like to do and that I'm good at, and I'm getting the broker to do the things that need to be done, but I have no real urge to understand those things or to really take an active role in them. But it is a unique brokerage arrangement. It's different to a traditional service provider because I am the employer. My name is the ABN, and the broker act on my behalf when they deal with the ATO because they pay all the workers on my behalf.
Okay.
So, yeah, it is, but there are more of those types of arrangements happening, I believe.
Yeah, so we've got some questions coming through now, so I'm going to just start to ask them. So the first one is to Linda. Linda, why are you the employer and not Jacob? A concern this person has is that as a parent and the employer, she might be exposed to occupational health and safety issues.
I'll explain first of all why I'm the employer. It really probably has to do with Jacob's disability and his ability to take on that role of employer. It's just I suppose it's around Jacob's support needs and his ability to take on the role with and the complexities of that role. I suppose that we've decided, or I've decided to do that on his behalf instead of Jacob doing it. I don't think that it would be actually right for Jacob to do it, knowing knowing his skill level in that particular area. But I'm sorry, the second part of the question was around the OH&S responsibilities?
Yes, I think it is as an employer. If you're I think maybe the question is as an individual and an employer rather than an organisation. Is there any exposure around that in terms of?
Well, I suppose what we do is that we my responsibility as an employer to maintain a safe workplace. We're very careful in talking about the workplace is our house and our home, and so it's not a typical workplace, but nonetheless it needs to be safe for all the people who are there, whether that's me, my son, other family members, or support workers. So I suppose we do have some workplace health and safety policies in place that address the issues of workplace health and safety. A lot of that is just being really, aware of any potential risks, having conversations about it, being consultative with everybody who's in the workplace, I suppose, which is once again, as I say, is our house in the community. I think we're doing okay. And I think that, we've sort of, I've made it my business to get to understand the current or the more recent changes to the Workplace Health and Safety Act.
Great.
I hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Linda. I'm sure if we might hear from the person again if they've got a follow-up question. So the next question I'm going to ask, I'm just asking them as they come in at the moment, is somebody asking, how do you employ people from the community and where do you advertise? So perhaps we could hear from all three people. Kath, starting with you, just a couple of minutes on the answer.
Sure. Well, I'm sure Linda and Carolyn have got more to say. I'm a bit new to it, but I have found people that I already knew, not necessarily that I was sort of close friends with, because there's some really tricky emotional kind of issues around going from friend to sort of worker and boss relationship, but I do work with some friends, and I also so people that I know about that I'm not necessarily hugely close to, but I know that they know what I do, they get my values, they're interested, and they've perhaps offered in the past. They may have done some. They may have offered sort of informal or that natural support, and then I've just kind of said, "Are you interested in some payment for that?" And I have, in my case, because the service provider I'm using is recruiting directly for individuals, so there's not like a huge existing pool of staff. She's also recommended one. The service provider, the main person that I work with in the service, has recommended a person. So they weren't employed by me and for me, but it was a good fit, and so I've made the most of that relationship as well. So a bit of a combination for me.
Great. Carolyn, you've actually written an article about this. It's up on In Charge.
I have written an article, yes, and the article is available on the In Charge website, I believe. So, the way I find staff is through a mix of resources, so advertising through local media, but also social media, is word of mouth. I find that very successful. I've just recently employed the daughter of one of my senior carers who's I always find that good carers have good genetics, so they can that's working well. I also have been placing ads at the university local to me, so I am capturing people who are students who are after work, particularly odd hours of the day. So I find, as I said before, I find mothers really good. So I would word the ads accordingly.
And Linda?
Yeah, I'm very similar to Carolyn. I've tried a bunch of different ways. It's sort of first of all, it might start off with word of mouth, and certainly asking some of the existing support workers if they know people. I've got ads which I put up on the university website for part-time jobs. I've used Gumtree recently, which is also a place to advertise for free, and I also recently put a job up on Ethical Jobs, which was a paid ad. Certainly, I use social media, and just sometimes, you know, you get a feeling somebody who's, as Kathleen was sort of on the fringe of the networks, but you know, who seems to really sort of understand where we're coming from. I think the most important thing we advertise for, or we seek when we recruit, is people who can support our vision. And sometimes that's you just get a feel for someone who might be someone that someone you know, or a friend of a friend, and they might be a person that you can offer the position to as well, or ask to come and have an interview.
Yeah, I think I've heard all three of you tell me previously that you think the most important thing in that, and certainly in my family, the most important thing is to actually describe the qualities that you want in somebody, the kind of roles that you're looking for, and then thinking about where you might find those kinds of people. So it's more sort of describing the role and the qualities first before seeking. I mean, of course, people come across your path, as you've said, and word of mouth, but there's something about having your ideas first.
Libby, I always say it's about the qualities, not the qualifications.
Yes, yeah. I would agree with that. And I also, one of the things that we find is that, you know, the best person for providing personal care might not be the best person for social connection. So the roles, you know, they might be supporting both, you know, people might be some, the roles that they actually have in providing support might be quite different based on their skill set and based on what support is needed by Jacob at particular times.
Okay. So we'll finish that question now, but just to let everybody know that we are actually going to we're planning on running a whole session on, again, with people with direct experience who have got different ways that they're recruiting to kind of take the full time to talk about recruitment. So I'm going to move on to another question, somebody who hasn't asked a question yet. This person is asking, how difficult is it to get an ABN? I work for a service provider and we're struggling to get the ATO to provide an ABN.
I've been told it takes 2 weeks online, so not very hard.
Yours took 2 weeks, Carolyn?
I've been told by other people that it takes about 2 weeks, and it's quite simple to fill in the form online and get it set up. It's not arduous at all.
We do something different. We don't have an ABN. As the employer, I don't have an ABN because the advice, I suppose, was different in our situation, and I'm not sure why. We have what's called a withholder provider number. Yeah. So that means that we have a number from the tax office to withhold tax on behalf of our support workers.
That's probably because you're paying them directly from your funds, whereas, yeah, I'm not sure.
It might be just a different way that we handle the funding that make that difference.
Yeah.
So, and that's, I suppose, the interesting thing is that was actually had to be done in most, I think, ABNs and things like that can be done on the internet. We actually had to fill in a piece of paper and put a stamp on an envelope and post it. It didn't take very long. I think probably it was only a week before we got that number, but it's just a process that we had to go through as directly employing.
Okay, I'm going to ask, let's see how we're going with the questions. Okay, and another person is saying that their daughter is with a good agency at the moment, but can she approach that agency to help her find someone to take her horse riding? The answer to that is yes, of course. Does anybody have any? Yes, please, Linda. Oh no,
Oh, it's
Kath.
Kath. Okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
I was just going to say, you can always, I mean, the more people ask more questions, the better, as a rule. I guess if you ask an agency, you just need to be mindful that there's sometimes a conflict of interest. They might be looking for them the best person to take your daughter horse riding, and that might not be the best person, or it might tick some of your other boxes or meet those quality sort of priorities and needs that we were talking about before. But what I think your question is referring to, which is really important, is that, yeah, in this new world, service providers are going to have to get really clear about what they can and cannot provide. And so I kind of think both. I think ask them to get them thinking about it and to challenge them to keep responding to the needs of people with disability, but also ask others, because they that conflict of interest. It's like you don't necessarily get financial advice from the bank that you're with. You get it from someone who's independent of that bank, perhaps. So I'd probably say both.
And the thing that I would add to that answer is that it's really good. I mean, certainly the service providers that we use and that we're connected to can help us find the right people if they're willing. But I guess what I've heard from the speakers today, and again, certainly from other people's experience that we're connected with, is it's really good to start from the basis of the role. So if you're looking for somebody to for something like horse riding or any other leisure interest, many people have said it's kind of a liberating thought to think that the person who might be best suited to support somebody to do that is somebody involved in the horse riding community, somebody who knows how to do that, who loves how to do that. And the freedom of self-direction and the freedom of managing funding this way means that you can seek those people yourself. Because really for horse riding, what you want is a horse rider, and perhaps they can learn the disability knowledge and experience after that. So we're going to take one final question for today. This is about work cover. And again, a question for Linda. This person is wondering whether work cover is the only insurance that you need to take out.
Workers' compensation is, you need to take out workers' compensation once your annual payroll reaches 7,500. This is in New South Wales. I can't speak about other states, I'm afraid. But if you look up work cover for your state, or WorkSafe if you're a territory, that will provide you with the information you need. But you can also take out, we believe it's advisable to take out public liability insurance. I haven't done that yet. We've just made some inquiries recently, and public liability has been a bit tricky to get in New South Wales because generally it's businesses that take out this type of insurance. So it's been a bit tricky to organise, but we've recently acquired some. I think that's the only two insurances that really are, certainly workers' compensation is vital, and public liability, I think, is vital.
Okay, so thank you so much to everybody, all of our guests again. Again, thank you so much to Bradley Reporting, who have provided the live captioning, which is just wonderful, and Hilary McPherson, who's been Auslan interpreting today. One of our aims is to make sure that our sessions are accessible in live format rather than post format. So it's just been really great to have them on today. I've launched a poll, just if you feel like you want to just give us a quick sense of what you felt about today's session. And as I said this afternoon, we are going to send you a notes from today, which includes people's where they've wanted. It includes Linda, for example, has offered her email address. You can get in contact with Linda more about her experience. And also another quick survey, just 4 questions this afternoon, which would really help us to know what your experience was like today and to give us some feedback. So thank you so much, and we're going to end the webinar now. Thank you and have a great day.